Hi, and welcome to another episode of SolidBox TV. I'm Chris Castle, and today we're going to review the M6700 Precision Mobile Workstation from Dell. If you remember last year, we reviewed the M6600. Now, the M6700 is a nice new generation, a new addition to the 6600 platform. Now, most notably today, we're going to differentiate between the 6500 and the 6700. Now, why the 6500 versus the 6700? The 6500 was the preferred mobile laptop about 3 years ago. Now, if you have this precision mobile workstation, it's probably time to consider upgrading to the 6700. Why? Well, we're going to cover that today in today's episode, but I want to make sure you understand the differences and to understand if it's worthwhile making the jump from the 65 to the 6700. All right? We're going to begin on the outside. Now, these are two different colors. This is the 6500 Covet Edition from Dell, and this is a normal 6700 that you would purchase through SolidBox. Now, there is a Covet Edition of this workstation, but I want to make sure that you understood that just the base model of the 6700 is a phenomenal improvement over the 6500. Now, when the 6500 came out, it was one of the first precision mobiles to have USB 3.0 ports. Now, it had two USB 3.0 ports on the right side if you're looking at the laptop, and now it has a total of two USB 3.0 ports and three USB 2.0 ports. One of those ports is a eSATA connector as well. Now, that hasn't changed with the new 6700. The same number of USB ports in total: two USB 3.0s and three USB 2.0s. Again, where we have the eSATA connector that also doubles as a USB 2.0 port. Another thing to consider is that in the 6500, it did not only have one Pcmcia slot, but it had two. Now, I don't know anyone who uses those ports anymore. They still have one Pcmcia slot on the 6700. So those are one of the notable differences you'll see between the two chassis. Now, again, on the outside, one of the biggest complaints of the 6500 was the lack of connectors on the back panel of the laptop. Now, what that did was it forced everything to the side of the laptop. You can see here with the 6500 the RJ45 connector, your Ethernet connector, and several of the other connectors like the RGB, your display, were on the right. That got in the way of most people's mousing hand. With the 6700 as well as the 6600, they made a very big leap there. They've moved the Ethernet port to the back, as well as an HDMI cable, an RGB port, and one of the USB 2.0/eSATA ports. Okay, on the side, it's freed up a lot of the output, the connectors that were coming out of there. You can see here we have a USB 3.0 port and a display port, and that's really freed up the mousing area for most of our right-handed friends. Now, we'll focus on the 6700 from here on out. Now, with all of our mobile platforms, we still opt for the DVD reader/writer, and in this case, we prefer the slot load. It's a lot cleaner, a lot less likely to break on you, and the 6700 definitely has that. You can see if we're going through from right to left on this side of the 6700, we have that Pcmcia Slot, SD card reader, some LEDs for activity on your system like power, battery, and of course hard drive access. Just two audio ports, just your regular 2.5 millimeter jacks for headphones and mic. There's a traditional powered FireWire connector here, and of course the two regular USB 2.0 ports there. Dell differentiates USB 2.0 from 3.0 by the color. You can see here we have white symbols versus red symbols here on the back. One of my favorite features about the new 6700 platform is easy access to your secondary hard drive. This platform actually has three hard drives, one mini card and two standard 2.5-inch hard drive bays. But the secondary bay is here accessible on the side. This makes it real easy to swap out hard drives if you want to run some sort of dual boot setup. Also, it's easy to pull out your data drive and keep that secure with you if that's the business you're in. One of our favorite things about the Dell Precision mobile lineup is that they've taken great consideration to keep their earliest adopters compatible with future standards. And what I mean by all that, I mean the docking station. Now this is the docking station interface for the Dell 6700. And if you look at this compared to the 6500 and even the predecessors to that, they use this port. So this means that if you have one of the ePort Plus replicators, aka docking station, you're going to be able to just drop this in there and use it like you normally use your 6500 or your 6600. So keep that in mind. This is future compatible with all the ePort Plus replicator products from Dell. Now, for the most part, this is similar to the 6600 and the 6500. It's a little smoother. There's a little more elegance to the bottom here. You may notice it's just more simplicity here right off the bat. Battery release is pretty much the same. This is a 9-cell battery, a 97 watt-hour battery. It's standard. You can get a higher capacity aftermarket, but this is fine. For most of us, we don't actually run our laptops or our mobile workstations unplugged anyway. Now, you notice here it's a pretty clean compartment. You have the release and the actual fastener to release the secondary hard drive from its bay. So that's how you would, if you want to do a hot swap, you would actually unscrew that and just pull down on the latch there and it would pop out. It's super convenient, especially if you want to do the dual boot like I mentioned. Batteries, like I said, they're very consistent with the other Dell batteries. These are unfortunately not compatible with the older batteries, the 6500 battery. All right. When you open the laptop, you'll notice that there's some really nice enhancements to the 6700 in terms of the tactile sensation, if you will. The surface here, this palm rest surface, is now using a kind of a rubbery matte surface, which I really like. It really feels real high-end to me, and you'll notice that, and I think you'll really appreciate that. Keyboard, identical layout to the 6600 with a tin keypad. Great backlit keyboard. I highly recommend that if you go with the 6700, you do opt for that. Now, other little things you'll notice right away is the bezel here. It's vented, and I swear this is already making it a lot cooler temperature-wise laptop. Elegant power button, it's backlit, as well as a volume and a mute button here. So it's really, those are the most accessible buttons, of course, and probably the most used buttons is the power button and the volume. This is the baseline model here, so you'll notice that, of course, that the real estate for the screen, this is a 1920 by 1080 display, full HD. Now the bezel here on the covet is very flush. It's all one piece. It's a glossy surface. But on our baseline model that we sell at SolidBox, this is the preferred setup for our engineering users. There's a webcam built in, and of course on the keyboard, I want to point out again that there's not only just your normal trackpad, there's also what we call the nipple here in the middle of the keyboard that acts as a second style mouse. All right, so if you're planning on upgrading your 6700 in the next year or so, be aware this is almost identical in terms of accessibility to the 6600. So our previous videos that discuss RAM and hard drive upgrades, they apply 100% to this chassis as well. All right, so keep that in mind. With all products, there are negatives, and at SolidBox, we make sure to find those negatives and communicate those to you. With the 6700, we find one issue, and that is the latching mechanism. Now, unlike the previous models, this has a little more difficulty closing. There are two tabs here that engage down here at the latch. Now, we find that if you just arbitrarily push and close the lid, that it may not completely latch. So our secret is to make sure you just use one finger on the right side of the latch and click it, and it closes pretty consistently. All right, I don't know why, but that's something we're communicating to Dell. So just keep that in mind when you purchase a 6700. Now let's talk specs and performance. The 6700 offers a tremendous upgrade over the 6500 and even the 6600 platform. Most notably is the fact that this uses the new Intel architecture, the new Ivy Bridge processor family, and of course the motherboard that goes with that. Now this is an upgrade over the previous generation Sandy Bridge and the first generation Sandy Bridge. Now just in terms of performance, you can now use up to a 3.0 gigahertz quad core processor. Now that's the fastest mobile processor you can get in the Dell family, and you'll notice that with our benchmarks, it scores tremendously well. Now, other things to keep in mind is that this processor family and motherboard family can support the new Quadro series cards, the K series cards, or the Kepler cards. Now, what kind of Quadro cards can you put in this exactly? Well, at SolidBox we add the K3000 and up to the K5000 Quadro card. Now, those two cards offer some serious GPU horsepower. Now, if you're using the Adobe products, you can offload your work, your rendering work, to the Quadro card using the Adobe Mercury Playback Engine. So those are two cards you definitely want to consider when making the purchase of a M6700. Now, other things to consider is that on this platform, it's really meant for people doing high definition video editing, solid modeling, and of course CAM programming. Now, with that in mind, the architects at Dell were very concerned about output. How do you get that output out to your machines? How do you get your data out to your customers? Well, I'm happy to say that with the USB 3.0 ports, the eSATA ports, and now the HDMI cable, you can truly take advantage of all the new technology with this new 6700 platform. Now, one of the last things I want to talk about is RAM. This new platform can handle the highest speed RAM on the market today, the 1600 and the 1866 megahertz RAM types. Now, that's DDR3 tri-channel RAM, and depending on the processor you opt for, whether it be a duo core or a quad core processor, that limits the type of RAM and the amount of RAM you can place in the system. So keep in mind with this new platform, if you have a duo core processor, just 2 cores, you're only going to be able to use 2 of the 4 memory slots on the system. So with a duo core, you're limited to the 2 slots that are available on your system, and that will, with the current RAM that's available, is 16 gigabytes. So let me recap that. Duo core equals 16 gigabytes max. If you have a 4 core, you can put in up to 32 gigabytes of RAM. Now, keep in mind though, 32 gigs of RAM at 1866, you're not going to quite find that on the market as of this video. So to be more practical, look for a 16 gigabyte configuration running at 1866. Now, we've shown you quite a few differences between these two models. The 6700 is quite a compelling upgrade in my book. Let me summarize exactly why I feel that way. The new Intel architecture is significantly faster than the old Sandy Bridge. So the Ivy Bridge versus the Sandy Bridge, we see at least an 18% difference in performance in SolidWorks, Adobe, Mastercam. Now, keep in mind, this is also going to allow you to access that faster RAM. So if you're using programs that are very RAM intensive, the upgrade to the nicer RAM is very well worth the upgrade alone. Okay. Also, you notice that there were different layouts in terms of ergonomics. This new platform is going to offer you a lot more access to the right side of it, keeps your mouse hand free. Also, those ports have been moved to the back. There's an HDMI cable now. So if you have HDMI devices, that's a great additional port, if you will. Now, one of the last things I want to discuss is the fact that Dell's displays are just getting more and more amazing. And if you were actually to compare these now to the Apple Retina displays that are available, you'll easily agree that they're very comparable to the performance of those displays. So overall, I think that the upgrade, if you're a SolidWorks, a Mastercam, and an Adobe Premiere user, I think the reasons to jump up to the 6700 are there. We're very happy with it. We aren't too crazy about the latching mechanism, but overall, it's a phenomenal product. Now, we hope you keep tuned to SolidBox TV in the future as we discuss other upgrades to the 6700, most notably the Covet edition of this laptop, which is also a phenomenal product. It's for those guys who have to have the best and the greatest piece of hardware, and the Covet is definitely that. But for those just making the simple upgrade, the 6700 baseline is just great as is. So, as always, we appreciate your time, and thank you for watching SolidBox TV.